If you surveyed 10,000 actual millionaires and asked them what made them rich, you'd probably expect stories about a genius stock pick, a startup that took off, or a crypto trade timed perfectly. Ramsey Solutions actually did that survey. Over 10,000 real millionaires, the largest study of its kind ever conducted. Not one of them said single stock investing was a major factor in their success. Not one. The most common jobs among these millionaires weren't hedge fund managers or tech founders. They were engineers, accountants, teachers, and managers. The real story of how most people get rich turns out to be almost aggressively boring, and that's exactly why nobody wants to make a movie about it. Let's start with the finding that should stop you in your tracks. 79 to 89% of the millionaires in that survey, depending on how you slice the data, received no inheritance at all. No trust fund, no rich family, no lucky windfall. And the income numbers are even more surprising. Only 31% of them averaged even $100,000 a year over their entire career. A full third never made six figures in a single working year of their life. I always assumed most millionaires either inherited it or had some huge salary I'll never come close to. That assumption is exactly what keeps a lot of people from ever starting. If you believe wealth requires a head start you don't have, there's no real incentive to begin the slow version at all. Wait, so most millionaires weren't even big earners? Most of them weren't. Which means the thing that actually made them rich had almost nothing to do with how much they made and almost everything to do with what they consistently did with it. So what do they actually do? 8 out of 10 of them invested in their company's 401k plan. 3 out of 4 said regular, consistent investing over a long period of time was the single biggest reason for their success. Not a hot tip. Not a bet on the right stock at the right moment. Just the same unglamorous contribution, made automatically, paycheck after paycheck for decades. That sounds too simple to actually work. It sounds too simple because we're used to being told wealth requires some kind of secret. The actual secret is that there isn't one, and that's a much less exciting sentence to put in a headline. Even the pedigree behind these millionaires turns out to be unremarkable. Most of them do have a college degree, but 62% went to ordinary public state schools, and only 8% attended a prestigious private university. And when researchers dug into daily habits, they found something almost comically mundane. The vast majority of these millionaires still use a grocery list. Not a complicated budgeting app, not a spreadsheet with color-coded categories. A shopping list, the same tool your grandmother used to avoid impulse purchases at the store. Here's the part that really breaks the stereotype, though. The top 5 careers among these millionaires were engineer, accountant, teacher, management, and attorney. Notice who's missing from that list. Doctors. Physicians are, on average, some of the highest earners in the entire country, and yet by reputation among financial planners, they're frequently among the worst at actually building wealth. High income, a late start due to years of school and residency, and a lifestyle that expands the moment the paycheck finally arrives, tend to cancel out the advantage of the big salary entirely. Doesn't that seem backwards? Shouldn't the highest earners end up the wealthiest? You'd think so. But a huge income that gets spent as fast as it arrives builds exactly as much wealth as a modest income that gets spent as fast as it arrives. The school teacher who started contributing to a retirement account at 25 is often further ahead than the specialist who didn't start seriously saving until their late 30s, no matter what either of their paycheck says. Here's a concrete version of what that boring math looks like in real life. Picture a 42-year-old with a paid-off house worth somewhere around $600,000 to $700,000 and another $600,000 to $800,000 sitting quietly in a 401k they've been contributing to since their 20s. Add those two numbers together, and that person is already a millionaire without ever touching a single risky investment, without ever founding a company, without a single dollar of inherited money. Just a mortgage paid down steadily and a retirement account that got funded every single paycheck, whether the market was up or down that particular month. And this is where one of the most famous investors in the world accidentally proves the exact same point, just at a scale that's almost impossible to picture. Warren Buffett started investing at 11 years old. He's one of the most skilled investors who has ever lived. And yet, by most credible estimates, somewhere around 95% of his entire net worth was built after he turned 65, the age most people are already retiring. When he turned 50, his fortune was a fraction of what it would eventually become. By 65, one widely cited breakdown puts his wealth at around $3 billion. Everything after that point, more than $80 billion earned after 50 and a similar amount earned after 65, came from the exact same strategy he'd already been running for decades, just given far more time and a much larger base to compound against. Wait, so even Warren Buffett didn't get most of his money from making brilliant trades? He made plenty of brilliant trades along the way. But the actual multiplier wasn't any single trade. It was time, applied to a strategy he refused to abandon for an absurdly long stretch of decades. His own explanation for his success was almost insultingly simple. His life, in his words, has been a product of compound interest. Now, to be fair, a study like this one does come with a real limitation worth naming. It was conducted by a company built around teaching exactly these habits, debt avoidance, budgeting, consistent investing, so people who respond to that kind of survey are naturally more likely to already be the type who saves consistently and avoids debt in the first place. That likely overstates how universal this formula is for absolutely everyone in the broader population. So this could just be a survey of people who already agreed with the answer before they took it. That's a fair critique, and it's worth holding on to. But even with that limitation acknowledged honestly, the pattern lines up with what shows up again and again across completely unrelated sources, from behavioral finance research to a single billionaire's biography. Patient, unglamorous, repeated behavior consistently outperforms clever, one-time bets, and that finding didn't originate from this survey alone. Which brings up an uncomfortable twist. If steady saving and investing works this reliably, why do so many high earners, including plenty of doctors and lawyers, still end up with surprisingly little to show for a big income? Because a high income with no savings discipline behind it isn't actually the same skill as wealth building at all. Someone earning $400,000 a year who spends nearly all of it is not further along the path to being a millionaire than a school teacher who's been quietly maxing out a retirement account since age 25. Income determines what's available to save. It's the saving and investing itself, done consistently for a long time, that actually builds the wealth. That's really the entire lesson hiding underneath 10,000 millionaire surveys and one legendary investor's biography. Getting rich was never actually about finding the clever move nobody else has thought of. It was about picking an unglamorous, repeatable habit, an automatic contribution, a paid-down mortgage, a boring index fund held for 30 years without panic, and then simply refusing to stop doing it year after year, long after it stopped feeling exciting. The rich people who built their own wealth almost never have a dramatic story to tell you about how they did it. Ask them directly, and you'll usually get some version of the same answer. They saved a portion of every paycheck, they didn't touch it, and they let 3 decades happen. That's not because they're hiding some more interesting secret behind a modest explanation. It's because the actual answer really is that boring, and being willing to do boring things consistently for a very long time without needing them to feel impressive along the way turns out to be the rarest financial skill there is. If you want the full breakdown of exactly how to structure your own boring, automatic wealth building plan step by step, let me know in the comments and I'll build that one next.